This is Dan Dix here, reporting for Press for Truth. We're here in downtown Vancouver right now at the Convention Center for Students for Liberty event, and I am joined by Clayton Welwood of the BC Libertarian Party. Now, I just caught your talk. It was a great talk, and the thing I liked most about your presentation was the fact that it was very much so solution-orientated. And I wanted to get your thoughts because of the fact that you talked about some of the overcoming governmental bureaucracies essentially and how to do that really. So near the end of your talk you kind of got into some of the solutions on how to overcome these bureaucratic various red tapes that are put on people. So maybe you can just start us off with the end of your talk. Like how can people move towards a more free, open, truly free market and open society?
Well, so what I talked about there was developing alternatives, voluntary alternatives to public services. So we all want public services, we all want things like healthcare and transportation and so on. But the issue with the government provided services is often they're monopolized, which means that, with any monopoly, whether it's public or private, and some of these things like BC ferries have been spun off into private monopolies essentially. Basically the quality of services that you get is not that great, and the amount that you pay is probably higher than it would be in some kind of a free market system. So if we as libertarians are interested in showing that alternatives to government-run services actually work, well, we need to try to demonstrate what those are, what they could be. So the main example that I gave in my talk was a guy by the name of Dale Brown, who's in inner city Detroit, and he's basically providing security services for people who work there who work and live there. And there's a lot of crime, there's home invasions, there's this sort of thing. And the municipal police in certain areas, when there's a 911 call, they just don't go there. So what do you need? Well, you need a voluntary alternative that works, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, policing seems like a very interesting area where moving towards something that's more privatized probably seems controversial to some people, but it makes sense to me. What are some other areas that you think would be beneficial for people to move into the private sector as opposed to the public and to benefit society?
Sure. Well, and I understand there's certain services that people, they don't want to think about, oh, geez, go to the private market. What could that mean? Healthcare is another one that people often don't want to touch. I think we need to have those conversations. But if we want to start with something that there's more agreement on opening up to the private market, well, why don't we talk about auto insurance, right? Mm-hmm. Many other provinces in Canada have gone this way. It's very easy to see what the path forward is. Why we are still forced in this province to pay for $200 of automobile liability coverage through a corporation, a crown corporation, which, as auditors' reports have recently revealed, is not very well run, mm-hmm. is not providing good, cost-effective service to its customers. I just see no need for it in 2017.
Yeah, for those of you who may not be aware, here in British Columbia, there is a massive monopoly on driving insurance. I've had to just learn this the hard way myself. Yeah. Coming in here, having to apply for insurance, I found out there's a total monopoly on it. But, so is there ways to knock down the barriers to entry? Is it ever going to be possible, do you think, for other insurance companies to be able to get in on the game? Or do they just have a monopoly here?
The thing is, it's not a complete monopoly. So if you want to get your collision coverage through a private insurer, if you want to get your loss of vehicle use through a private insurer, you can do that. But the problem is you're still forced to get this minimum level of third-party liability coverage through ICBC, and you pay as much for that as you do for all these other coverages. So it's not good value for money. And I would say that on the order of 80-85% of British Columbians agree that the system as it is not working. So it just takes the political will and the effort to overturn the legislation that is keeping this in place.
Sounds to me like the key factor in all of this is voluntarism, but voluntary, mutually agreeable contracts between two parties. Yep. Now, as someone who's the leader of the BC Libertarian Party, who is promoting this concept, would you consider are you an anarchist, or do you consider yourself an anarchist?
No, I don't consider myself an anarchist, but I think that whenever we're thinking about public services, we need to be thinking about how can we organize this in a voluntary way. Maybe we will find at the end of that process, when we look at all the services that we have, that they all can work in an entirely voluntary way. I would love to get to that point. I don't think we're there yet. So personally, I advocate for just looking, okay, let's go for the low-hanging fruit. Let's go for the auto insurance sector. But even I think we should be talking about some of the sacred cows like healthcare. Maybe not going immediately to an entirely private system. Keep those the public system for emergency healthcare system, for emergency situations, right? When you get hit by a truck and you need to go to the hospital. But we can look at it in terms of, basic, specialist services, surgeries, MRIs, all these things that are not life or death, but that are basically we're stuck with these breadlines of socialism in our current healthcare system. We need to find a way to open that up. That way is the free market.
Yeah, exactly. But essentially, taking it one step at a time.
Exactly.
Really, I mean, it's like when they wanted to abolish slavery. A lot of the white owners was like, well, how's this going to work? How are we going to get our cotton made and stuff? It's like, don't worry about how it's going to work. We just know that it needs to be done, right? Yeah. And we'll figure out how it's going to be done later. Yeah. So, maybe you can let people know how they can find more about you. Do you have a Twitter, or what's the website?
Yeah, so we've got a website, libertarian.bc.ca. So if you're interested in getting involved, getting on our mailing list, we do a lot of events around town in other parts of the province. We've got a pub night coming up on the 15th. So check us out online. We're also on Twitter at BC Libertarians, and we're on Facebook as well, BC Libertarian Party.
Awesome. Thanks so much for talking to us. Check the links in the description. For us here at Press for Truth, anything that's in line with the voluntarism principles is cool with us. So once again, thanks so much for talking to us.
Thanks, Dan.